We'll be going back to international law with our next speaker. That is Professor Wasantha Seneviratne, who is Senior Lecturer at the Department of Public and International Law at the University of Colombo. She teaches human rights law, humanitarian law, and is Director of the Master's Program in Human Rights Law and Humanitarian Law at that faculty. She's also an Executive Editor of the Sri Lanka Journal of International Law. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Professor Chair, ladies and gentlemen. The title of my research paper is Right to Intervene or Not to be Intervened, the impact of international humanitarian interventions on state sovereignty from an international law perspective. Although the United Nations Charter clearly prohibits international interventions against territorial sovereignty and political independence of states, many international interventions are currently undertaken based on humanitarian grounds. Therefore, I researched in my paper as to whether there is an established right in international law either to intervene or not to be intervened. This problem requires the examination of present-day international interventions ostensibly based on humanitarian purposes, whether to be allowed as of a right of the interveners or to be rejected as of a right of the target state subject to such a test. The secondary question I researched in my paper has been whether the emerging concept of responsibility to protect, popularly known as R2P, is able to reconcile these competing rights effectively based on international law principles. I will pick a few research issues that I have examined and the possible conclusions that we can arrive at based on this dogmatical dilemma presently representing in the international arena. We understand the fact that due to many transformations happen at the international level and the practicalities based on egregious human rights violations and humanitarian law violations, we have to understand that some of the traditional concepts of international law needs to be reconceptualized. As a result, we find the United Nations Charter, though required member states to refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against territorial sovereignty and political independence of the state, whether we can invoke any right from the part of the intervening states, whether they can claim a possible right to intervene when massive human rights catastrophes encounter in a country, as to whether those to be stopped or hold or to prevent using any form of international interventions. It could be the strongest form, could be the use of force, but even the milder notions could be some of the interventions like what Sri Lanka at present is facing with the resolutions passed at the United Nations Human Rights Council, and even some of the milder notions of interventions such as financial institutions and their terms to be carried out, and the needs of the state to work out according to their plan. So this actually we have to look at from the perspectives of the intervening states in the polarized world and the possibilities of such interventions and their impact on state sovereignty. We find basically Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the United Nations Charter requires such a strong form of prohibition from the member states to refrain their international relations using threat or use of force against other countries' territorial sovereignty. But at the same time, we find two main exceptions to the main norm of this Article 2, Paragraph 4, that is Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, based on right to self-defense against a country or collective self-defense of nations in the international level, together with the Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, which provides for enforcement action authorized by the UN Security Council, including use of force. Some of the countries force or the mild norms, they claim, well, humanitarian intervention should be recognized as a third exception. Can we recognize this argument? That is one of the research issues that I very deeply examined in this research paper, whether